Hello once again everyone, and welcome back to the Zettel. Joining me once again is Eric, and today we're going to be jumping into our next kind of, it's in this Verk section, but think of this as a sort of named combo would be probably the best descriptor, and it's in that thumb grip family and uses Verk-like motions. This is the Verkerer or Verkerer. I'm not exactly certain which pronunciation is correct. I always said Verkerer, that's what I heard, so that's what we're going with. But either way, the point of this is it is a driving action. If you're not familiar with what a driving action is, that is where you attack two openings, usually on a crosswise sort of plane, to get your opponent into constant parrying, from which you may then enter into a larger hit if you don't hit them already. In this case, it's going to be used to get us to the close range game if we don't already strike it. Now, the way the Verkerer works is you want to stay left foot forward and be in the thumb grip. So go ahead and just go to normal flug, stick your thumb up, and turn it so it's sort of next to you. This is a good place to start it from. My first strike is I'm going to pull that pommel to me and let my hip come up so I strike a third from below. Here's that from the side. Up. Now you want to make sure it goes from your right across yourself. You're not trying to cut in plane. That doesn't work very well. It's going across you as that hip comes up. Then simply push the pommel down as you step forward. You go back down that line and it comes in from above. With a little bit of practice, it's not too complicated. Now, one of the things that might surprise you is that we're going from our lower right to our upper left, our non-dominant line, compared to upper right and lower left, and we're keeping the left foot forward. The reason for this is because if I start throwing this at Eric and he parries, none of these defenses set him up for a counterattack. So let's talk about asymmetry for a second. If Eric stands in flug, just flug on the right side, if I throw something here, regardless of high or low line, right, this sets him up to his inside counterattack. He can just either, from where he is, go back to flug, he can just punch this forward, or, more devastatingly, he can uncork and bring his right side to bear, which is where most of the counterattacks, the Meisterhau, etc., come out of. I would like to avoid that. So by attacking down at his left hip, that means he has to bring his arms across, from which, sure, he can put the point in, but it doesn't have that same counterattack pressure because it's his offside, or it puts him into his upper right, which, yes, we can cut out of there, but we don't have the time to cut out of there. Sure, he can launch a point, but again, it's the same thing as below. A good fencer will be able to attack at these positions, but under duress, they won't be able to launch the counterattack that they need to get out of this. So let's have you take a step forward. Now, the time that you want to launch into this, I recommend don't just walk up to someone and try to use the Verkerer. Instead, what it wants to be is you want to be fencing for a little bit, ting, 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 right? It's that moment of I've slipped into this position. My first strike is from below, and I'm putting it all the way up to his face so he has to force it down. Then I'm going to push from that position with my pommel in and above, so he has to not only torque himself up, but you notice at our distance, I pretty much got it. This forces him to have to step back as he drops into flug and ox as his klitten, rather than as, really good parries. And this is what will drive him before me. Other people may just back up from you, and this is fine, you keep going. So again, the idea is I find myself here, that first strike is from below, and the way I advance is I push my back hip up, but I don't pass. Then I push my left leg out as I come forward. Up, down, up, down. The more I keep my hand in place, the more that tip imposes from above or comes up from below. I don't want this to stop down here. He's going to hit me, like we talked about with cuts from below. You've got to drive it all the way up. So that tip is coming up to the face. That's what scares him. And the more of a 45 you make it, the more you gain his flat, his inside flat, and scare him. So I'll show that a couple times. Eric, let's have you take 3 steps forward, and I'm going to just drive him across the screen. So, from here, nice and straightforward. It's very hard for him to get out of this without getting hit himself. And since I'm going the shorter possible route and my shield is staying right in front of me, I'm pretty safe, honestly. Now, you're not going to do this forever. You're going to get it for a couple times. You get him to do that desperate big parry. Usually what you want to do is you get a solid above that kind of breaks through. Maybe this is because he tried to step out to the side or tried to change his blade position to get an advantage. Or maybe you just luck out and get a very powerful one. What this means is, from here to here, I can impose my tip over that guard. I'm going to keep my hands up where I am, and I'm going to put that point downward so he feels that pressure, which forces him to hoist his arms up to defend himself. Now you notice I'm getting closer to him here. This is by design. While I could absolutely just poke him, I want him to have to scoop my thrust upward, which helps this whole side start to move. And now we're going to jump into the Dutch dolphin. Now, the Dutch dolphin running through, or lauf on Dutch, is something that I'm going to give its own dedicated video when we get to it later in the Zettel. For now, let me preface it by explaining what a Dutch dolphin is supposed to do. It is meant to be a killing throw. It is not a gentle throw. It is not a friendly throw. It is meant to be, I am getting all the way up to Eric's body, getting my hip behind his hip, and dumping him onto his head. You'll see people do the Dutch dolphin when they're demonstrating it slowly or nicely. They'll do more like just an outer reach, a hips and knees technique, and absolutely that is it in principle. But that is not what Dutch dolphin is supposed to be, especially after all this momentum if you're doing it correctly. So again, I will go into full detail about this later. For now, put a pin into it. I'll explain how I enter, but we won't go through the rest. So let's have you trade sides so I can lock up your side for the camera. So, again, the idea is I'm driving him before me with this inverter until I get to pose that thrust in, and I push. I leave my left hand where it is, and I let my whole right side step up forward nice and tight, and I just let this fall on my shoulder. You can also just ditch your sword entirely if you want. My goal is I want to duck my head into this hole here so that my head comes up underneath his armpit. My right arm, let's bring me towards the camera. My right arm goes across underneath both of his arms as tight to his armpit as I can, and my hip bone goes as tight behind his as possible. Let's switch back. The goal here is I am not trying to throw him straight backwards. That may happen if you enter with a lot of force. The goal is that once I get this lock, I'm going to turn, and he's going to go over my back straight into the ground. That's the killing part, is that 45 turn. And that's what really makes this throw work, is it's that lift, dump, or my favorite term for it from Italian, capofitto, head to earth. So, I will show that entry one more time, and then we'll get into the other version. And I'm not going to show this one full speed, we'll just do it kind of slowish intensity again. So, up, down, push, through, then we go. And my sword just flops onto my shoulder. Honestly, just practicing that part is really good. Just being able to work up to the body and just lock somebody there goes a long way in improving all of your wrestling entries. But that's just one option. And it's certainly on the fatal scale of things. But there's also then the option if his hand is low in his parry. Now, low can mean a couple different things, and I've seen a couple different interpretations. Let's switch that again. Low can mean he actually catches my cut on the lower side and pushes down into this. I should point out, I don't like this interpretation for these reasons. So let's say he catches this one. Let me get a little deeper. Right? He catches this one and pushes down and out. Absolutely, this gives me that target to go for his elbow, but it's just better for me to cut from above. That's a stronger cut, and that's going to hit him in the head. That's going to drop him. So I don't like that. Instead, what I believe it is that he goes from catching to binding in. Think of it like a scales on your offside. So I come out from below, boom, I come in from above, and he binds out against me, meaning that now when I'm that tight, his arms have come toward me, giving the target. Now, same exact idea is present. I'm going to kind of keep what I got and advance my left side up, and at the same time, I'm taking my hand off, and I'm going to strike the elbow. This is described as an elbow push, but because it falls into the category of unfriendly techniques, what this is most likely meant to be is I just go ahead and strike that thing as hard as I can. At the same time as I'm going to do that strike, I'm slipping my left leg in front of his right. So odds are that as he does this bind out, he's probably creating space. So let me walk through how I essentially see that. Someone's driving you here and here, here and here. If you can get left foot forward, that means this parry is weaker, this one is stronger. If you stay right foot forward, it means this parry is stronger, this one is weaker. Regardless, I believe that it's probably something along the lines of when I see it's time to bind, I'm probably going ahead and giving myself maximum space. Reason being is then, if they want to cut from below again, this would be something I could step into. Basically, by having this wider, it gives me a more guaranteed step, but it also enters into my throw more. So make sure that left leg is back. Again, I'm up, I come down and he binds in, perfect. I step up, and I get that strike, and I put my foot in at the same time. This is not something I will do at full speed. It's not something I've done at full speed, because it requires you to crack that elbow. That's why it falls into the unfriendly category, as we get this as a through line through a lot of the stuff. You get these strikes to the elbow, and then you get an option not to. Reason being is the difference between friendly and unfriendly combat. The reason I haven't done it is because I've never done unfriendly combat. The reason for this, and the reason I implore you not to do this outside of a curricular setting, is because there's no way to strike an elbow or any joint. This is why we don't strike each other. There's no way to do it nicely and be effective. Just hold up your arm to do it, Eric, right? My goal when I strike this elbow is to buckle this shape as much as possible so that this bends up and twists up, and he's not thinking about the fact that I've slipped my foot in front of him. I can just grab and push, sure, that's fine, but to do it with momentum requires percussion. So either I'm percussively not doing anything, or I'm percussively doing something and Eric won't play with me anymore. So this is why I'm not going to go into super detail about this one, but that is what is described. It's that hard crack, you slip your leg in, they go onto the floor. Now, the alternative is something you can absolutely do, which is you're going to instead wrap your left arm around their hip. So here is the idea for that. I'm striking up, down, and he imposes it out, right? Let me go ahead and give the hands a little bit more here. There we go. Okay, not quite enough that I can go underneath them, but enough that I have a target. I'm going to, again, advance up behind it, throw my arm around his body, which gets my hip up in front of him, and then this is a very gentle hip throw, frankly. Just down around my hip, he goes down to the floor, nothing too complicated. So great, 3 ways to enter into a throw using this driving action. But what if, for example, we don't want to throw? Is this technique useless? No, absolutely not. This can branch into a lot of really good things that I'm going to show real quick, that I prefer to use it from since I don't always want to go to these sometimes dangerous throws. So, option number 1. You just hit them on the driving, right? Absolutely, as I'm just pushing them toward me, at any point with this, I can manage to get in close enough to get a hit, and once I get that hit, I can lean if I choose to. Alternatively, he may parry up high, but you don't want to step through. You are keeping your left leg forward, rather than putting that right leg all the way up to his body. Use that right leg to step out in the triangle. So what that would look like is, I get here, I impose it from above, and he really hoists his arms up. So I use this step to now set up a shot, either with a cut, with an Umteswerk, or there's also just a thrust there, and I'm perfectly safe, because he can't bring it down the line. Another option, same idea, he parries out, and he keeps his hands low, right? So boom, just wide out. This is just a normal Zwerkow, so that's totally fine. Again, just stepping out into the triangle. And finally, third option is you drive. He doesn't do anything different. You just choose to take a different window. One of my personal favorite things to do this is just to stop being in thumb grip. So for example, I drive, let's just do it twice. Right? Drive. And all I did there was my cut was coming down with the thumb. I took my thumb off and just let it turn into a right over. Nice and sneaky. Everyone kind of forgets you can get out of thumb grip once you're into it. Either way though, that is the Verkerer or Verkerer. The whole point of it is you're just driving them, from which you can do multiple things, but what the Zettel wants you to do is to get close to him when he inevitably has to parry that poised in thrust if you haven't cut them already. When they defend themselves, that sets up then for your entries to throw, 2 of which are not friendly, 1 of which is friendly. And we'll be talking more about that when we get into the running through section, and also some more stuff later this year, early next year. But anyway, thank you very much, Eric. I abuse you so. And thank you all very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.